Let's talk about autistic internal meltdowns. Hey folks, welcome to the Autistic Adoptee channel. As the channel name suggests, I am both autistic and I am an adoptee. I've said on this channel and to people in real life that I don't really have meltdowns, that I tend more towards shutdowns instead. And I truly believe that. I truly believed it until recently when I started to read more about internal meltdowns. So, in this episode, I'd like to talk about internal meltdowns, um, how I've changed my thinking about whether or not I have meltdowns at all, and why I think that many high masking adult autistic folks like me might internalize their meltdowns instead of having the stereotypical large external meltdowns. And while I personally think that internal meltdowns are more a feature of autistic people with lower support needs, I am open to the idea that it could apply to autistic folks with higher support needs as well. You can let me know what you think about that in the comments below. I've talked about meltdowns in a previous episode, but as a quick recap, a meltdown generally occurs when an autistic person's needs are not being met. It is an involuntary response. It is not an attempt at manipulation. And it is not being done for the autistic person to get their own way. It is a fight, flight, or freeze response to those unmet needs. Not having those needs met, not having needs met can look like overwhelming sensory overload. It can look like unexpected changes in plans. It can look like our communication being completely misunderstood. It can look like being blamed for something unjustly, and so on. There are so many things that could spark a meltdown, and generally, it's a buildup of things, and then just that one more unmet need that tips us over into a state of meltdown. And when we hear the word meltdown, many of us immediately picture someone, generally a child, kicking and screaming or covering their heads and rocking violently or crying and banging their heads or banging their hands or just simply crying uncontrollably or like lashing out at other people or other objects violently or any number of stereotypical autistics meltdown behavior, right? There's so many stereotypes around it. And I'll be honest, and this is exactly what I used to think of when I heard the word meltdown. But the problem is that, like every stereotype, there may be some truth in it. There is some truth in it, right? Those types of meltdowns can and do happen. But the stereotype does not tell the whole story. Nor does it show the complete picture, the complete spectrum of what meltdowns can look like. That is the danger of stereotypes, is they only tell part of the story. Many autistic people, especially adults, including me, have learned to internalize their meltdowns in order to mask and not appear, quote unquote, crazy. So, for instance, when I'm in a state of complete overwhelm, I get a massive surge of anxiety that spikes my heart rate. It makes me feel short of breath, like I'm not getting enough air. And I have trouble thinking in general. And the only thing that I can think about is whatever it is that set me off. Internally, everything is in chaos. It's just roiling in chaos. But externally, I still look calm. I mean, I might show some signs. I might seem a little impatient, or a little irritable, or I might get curt or short with people, or I might seem like I'm just starting to shut down and withdraw. Whenever I can, I'll often remove myself from the situation, physically remove myself from the situation if possible. But externally, I still look relatively calm, and it's hard to tell that I'm actually inside. I am completely melting down, that I am in complete chaos inside. And this has been true for me since childhood. As a child, I never threw tantrums, let alone meltdowns, full-blown meltdowns. And my wife actually didn't believe that I never threw tantrums as a kid, as a child, until she asked my adoptive mother about it, and my adoptive mother confirmed that no, I never really had tantrums as a child. As an example, I remember an incident when I was a kid, right? When I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I had decided that I was old enough to start wearing ties. And I put together in my head all the logical reasons, all the logical arguments for why I was old enough to start wearing ties and why it was appropriate for me, right? So my adoptive mother and I were at a TJ Maxx and TJ Maxx department store, and I made my very, very well reasoned and incredibly well thought out case for why I was ready to start wearing ties and why she should buy me one. What I didn't know at the time, because as a kid, you never know. I mean, you don't really know that you're poor, right? So I didn't know at the time that we didn't have a lot of money. And my adoptive mother rightfully said no to my request for a tie. But she didn't mention that it was a financial decision. She simply said, "You don't need a tie." And when I tried to persist with my incredibly well-reasoned arguments, my incredible logical thought process, she just kept saying no, and you don't need a tie, and it's not necessary, etc., right? So, on top of the sensory issues with clothing that plagued my entire childhood, on top of the constant chronic pain that I lived with even as a child, on top of being completely overheated, it was summer in Chicago, my carefully crafted argument falling on what I perceived as deaf ears was the tipping point. I remember this massive surge of confusion and anger that my incredibly well-constructed case was denied. I remember playing it over and over in my head and not understanding why she couldn't see the logic. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything but replay my argument in my head over and over and over again. I ended up turning around and walking out of the store and sitting in the car until she was done. Until she was done with her shopping. I then shut down and didn't speak to her or anyone else for days. Not that I spoke a lot as a child to begin with, because I was a very quiet, very withdrawn, introverted child. So as I mentioned up front, it is my belief that autistic adults learn to internalize their meltdowns in order to mask their autism, right? I think that the reason why I learned this masking behavior so early on in my childhood is due to the overlap or intersection with adoption trauma. Adoptees, especially those with a history of trauma. I mean, all adoption is trauma, but trauma on top of that. Adoptees with a history of trauma will often go out of their way to behave so that they don't get rejected by their new adoptive family. The complete opposite is also true. And some adoptees act out so that if they are rejected, it was because they chose to be rejected, if that makes sense. So, and then some traumatized adoptees might start with behaving and then switch over to acting out at some point. And this is what I did. In my early childhood, I didn't throw tantrums and I didn't act out at all until, my teens, when that radically switched. In my early childhood, I'd already learned to mask my meltdowns because I was trying very hard to behave and not be rejected by my adoptive family. Just like adults learn to internalize their meltdowns and mask, and they work extremely hard at maintaining that mask and internalizing their meltdowns to avoid being perceived as crazy or otherwise not normal, right? Internalizing meltdowns is basically very much a masking behavior. And being able to recognize that I do, in fact, have meltdowns and always have had meltdowns, I've just been masking them, is helping me to understand and explain so many moments in my life. It has been a revelation for me. It's made a massive difference in understanding myself and understanding why I need to protect myself from all of those triggers, all of those unmet needs that can build up and lead to a meltdown. So what about all of you? What have your experiences been? Do you internalize your meltdowns? Do you think that internalizing meltdowns is a function of masking, as I've come to believe it to be? Let's talk about it in the comment section down below. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, remember to drop a like and leave a comment or a question down below. If you're new here, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more content like this. Until the next video, keep living your best life and know that you deserve it.